It was kind of random that I chose Copenhagen for study abroad. I think when I first got here, I just thought it was so beautiful and charming. My dorm that I stayed in for study abroad was right by Nyhavn, which is that iconic canal with all of the colorful houses. And that whole part of the city is old and historic, which you don't get much of in the US, especially in Texas, where I'm from. So I think I was just very charmed by Copenhagen from the very beginning. Hi, welcome to our Copenhagen apartment. Come on in. My name is Ilana Buhl. I'm 30 years old and I'm an American living in Copenhagen, Denmark. Our rent is about 14,600 Danish kroner a month, which is about 2,100 US dollars. I'm a primary school teacher and I work at an international school here in Copenhagen. Before I moved to Denmark, I was living in Dallas, Texas, and I had been there for about 3 years. The first time I came to Denmark was when I was studying abroad in college. I did a summer program in Copenhagen and absolutely fell in love with it. So a few years later, I went on a backpacking trip with one of my friends, and of course I wanted to come back to Copenhagen, so we did, and that is when I met my husband, who is Danish. When I met my husband and we were doing long distance, of course, we were talking about who would move where, and he was very open to moving to the US actually, but ultimately we decided that I would come here. I really love the size of Copenhagen. I love that it feels like a city, it feels very international, but it's small enough that everything's still very accessible, especially with the public transportation that we have. I never lived in a city with good public transportation before, so I really appreciate it. As a parent, I also am so happy to live in Copenhagen. The whole city feels very family friendly. Like you never feel like you're a nuisance going around somewhere with your stroller. I can speak Danish. I'm not fluent, but I tried to cram as much Danish learning into the first year and a half that I was here, especially before I started working. I can have most everyday exchanges and conversations in Danish. Right before I moved, I was mostly just really excited. I guess I was just really ready to not be long distance anymore. I was also feeling really burnt out from my teaching job in the US, so I was just really ready for a change. We started looking for apartments online and browsed around a bit, and then we decided that a new build was probably best for us for a couple of reasons. We knew that we wanted a fairly modern kitchen and bathroom, which are harder to come by in the city center, especially if you have a budget, as we did. We found this apartment online when I was here in Copenhagen and we were looking together, but then I had to go back to the US. So my husband came to a viewing of the apartment by himself and he, sent me pictures and he said it looked good. I trusted his judgment and then we applied and were able to get a lease. I used to be the place where they would dispose of waste until the 1970s, and so it was referred to by some people as Island. Not anymore though. I don't think people still call it that, but it had that reputation. One, two, three. Down! I would say our rent is higher here compared to Dallas. Texas cities have a much lower cost of living. I think it's a good value for being in Copenhagen and for the amount of space that we have, especially because since we moved in, the landlords can't increase the rent very much every year. It's tied to inflation. So kind of the longer we live here, the more reasonably priced it seems compared to other things in the area. Before we moved in, we had to pay 2 months of rent up front and 3 months of rent as a security deposit. So that was about 10,500 US dollars. I was really surprised. I think my last apartment in Dallas, I paid like $250 as a security deposit, and the rent was like $1,500, so it was like a fraction of my monthly rent that I paid for the deposit. And I got it all back too. And that's generally what I hear, is people often don't get their security deposits back here. So we'll see. When we moved here, we didn't really have furniture because I moved with 3 suitcases. I didn't ship anything from the US, and my husband had been living with a roommate before we moved in together, so he didn't have a ton of furniture either. Basically, I think he had a desk and a couple of bookshelves, so we had to buy everything else. We also had to buy like light fixtures because those don't come installed in our apartment and most Copenhagen apartments. And that's apparently something that a lot of Danes like. They like to choose their own light fixtures and make it fit their style and kind of set the mood of the room, but it was definitely not something that I ever had to do in the US. So I was surprised that we had to do that. I'll show you our main living area. So over here is our living room and also office. When you go into different Danish homes, you'll notice that a lot of them have the same kind of like little Danish pieces. So we have some of those scattered around. One of them is this little optimist, which comes in a lot of different like colors. And then this monkey is ubiquitous in Danish homes. This is our kitchen and dining area, our one wall of kitchen, which is definitely much smaller than I was used to in the US. Pretty limited counter space. I do love that the appliances blend in with the kitchen. This is our dishwasher. When we moved in, the apartment was a really good size for just me and my husband. But now that we have a child and my husband works from home sometimes, it is feeling like it would be really nice to have an extra room that could be an office. But for now, this is our best solution. This is our bedroom. We liked that it had a great size. This is probably almost a king size bed. We have not adopted the European model of 2 separate duvets, mostly because when I moved here, I just didn't like the look of it. We were very lucky to have built-in wardrobes. Most people have to build their own wardrobes, and like bedroom closets are definitely not common in Copenhagen. This is my son's room. When we first moved in, this was our office/guest room. So when I first moved here, I wanted to have a guest room so that if anyone came to visit me, they would have a free place to stay. But then we had a child, so now it's his room. This is our bathroom/laundry room. We have a shower, but no bathtubs. So like many people who have children in Copenhagen, we have this little plastic bathtub that we use for baby baths. I could see myself here, I'm not gonna say the rest of my life, but like indefinitely. I certainly could see us moving a bit outside of Copenhagen, but I don't wanna go too far. And it's always a possibility that we could move to the US or somewhere else. I would say I'm happier living in Copenhagen than in Dallas. I think a big part of that is job satisfaction, honestly. I work much more reasonable hours. The expectations are more reasonable. My salary is reasonable. We all spend a big chunk of our life working, and so I think that that makes a big difference. But I also think that I'm able to enjoy the time that I'm not at work more because I'm not stressed about things that I probably would be in the US. I don't want to go too controversial here, but one of those is gun violence. I don't have to worry about gun violence for myself or my child, and I think that that's just a big stress on so many Americans right now that I am very fortunate to not have to think about. And you know, I don't have to worry about if I lose my job, are we not going to have health care? I think that the Danish social system does so much for its residents that just allows you to live your life with less stress and enjoy it more. And that's something that Danes really value. Yeah. Oh, you did? Ooh, how was it?